Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Drake, Beyonce, and house music, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So I've realized that there's a whole chunk of my audience who really do not care for album bomb weeks in the Hot 100 on this show, especially when I've already reviewed the album on my main channel, and I honestly can't blame them for it. It's a recap of something they've often already heard, and often kind of feels depressing to boot. But what I find interesting is that even as Drake lands another entire project in the Hot 100, 13 songs, rules are in effect, and has a new number one, it has the feel of the moment he was attempting, not quite sticking the way he had planned, which is both kind of surprising and a bit interesting for me. And that conversation starts with our new number one, Jimmy Cooks by Drake featuring 21 Savage. Keep in mind that none of Honestly Nevermind has been shipped to radio, so this got here on streaming and a little bit of sales. In other words, it's not built to last. And while I'll get into the irony of this being the song that got the number one, then we got the previous running conflict for the top just below it, with As It Was by Harry Styles having the extra edge on sales and streaming at number two, and First Class by Jack Harlow steadily widening its advantage on the radio at number three. All this kind of strands Wait For You by Future featuring Drake and Thames at number four, with better streaming and a legit radio run at number four, but I'll say it again, I think a stronger challenger is About Damn Time by Lizzo at number five, with even stronger radio and reinforced streaming. Then we got two more Drake songs you can chalk up to streaming and a bit of sales, Sticky at number 6 and Falling Back at number 7, the latter this high thanks to the video. But then we got a nice surprise with Glimpse of Us by Joji actually up to number 8 because it gained on streams this week even despite the album bomb. In contrast, running up that hill, A Deal With God by K. Bush took the expected hit to number 9. I'm going to be very curious how this will all rebound next week if it does at all. But finally, somehow still clinging to the top 10, Heat Waves by Glass Animals is still goddamn here, because while it is fading in all channels, it's just not fading fast enough. Speaking of which, our losers and dropouts. And in the latter category, it's not really surprising that most of the songs that were getting forced off were cuts that they were already on the downswing or never took off properly, like Freaky Deaky by Tyga and Doja Cat. Although country in particular had a pretty rough week with Slow Down Summer by Thomas Rhett, If I Was a Cowboy by Miranda Lambert, and Till You Can't by Cody Johnson all exiting, even if in the last case it handily clinched its year-end list spot for 2022. But for our losers, oh come on, there's over 40 of them here. Really? Alright, fine. Let's start off with the debuts from last week. So Good by Halsey at 87, Cash In, Cash Out by Pharrell, 21 Savage, and Tyler, the Creator at 73, Yet to Come by BTS at 68, and Rockin' a Hard Place by Bailey Zimmerman at 72. You also had Fall in Love fell down to 60 while we're here. Then there are the gains from last week now losing, like Last Night Lonely by John Party at 85, Te Felicito by Shakira and Raul Alejandro at 81, Ghost Story by Carrie Underwood at 80, She Likes It by Russell Dickerson and Jake Scott at 77, She Had Me at Heads Carolina by Cole Swindell at 76, and Vegas by Doja Cat at 67. Then there are the continued losers like Cooped Up by Post Malone and Roddy Ricch at 55, Puffin' on Zooties by Future at 58, Distraction by Polo G at 94, and N95 by Kendrick Lamar at 96. Might as well throw in Silent Hill with Kodak Black at 71 too. Next, let's go through the Bad Bunny losses. Notable if only because he still has a considerable chart presence weeks after the album bomb. Moscow Mule at 32, Party with Raul Alejandro at 51, Después de la Playa at 53, Ojitos Lindos with Bomba Estéreo at 57, Tarot with Jay Cortez at 75, and Un Ratito at 84. Finally, the rest of these. She's All I Wanna Be by Tate McRae at 99, Circles Around This Town by Maren Morris at 91, Right On by Lil Baby at 90, Thought You Should Know by Morgan Wallen at 86, Music for a Sushi Restaurant by Harry Styles at 83, Flower Shops by Ernest and Morgan Wallen at 79, and To the Moon by J&R Choi and Sam Tompkins at 74. Then there's What Happened to Virgil by Lil Durk at 70, When You're Gone by Shawn Mendes at 69, Sleazy Flow by Sleazy World Go and Lil Baby at 65, Mami Me by Becky G and Carol G at 64, Damn Straight by Scotty McCreery at 59, and Trouble with the Heartbreak by Jason Aldean at 54. Finally, AA by Walker Hayes at 48, Sweetest Pie by Megan Thee Stallion and Dua Lipa at 44, Take My Name by Parmalee at 43, Super Gremlin by Kodak Black at 38, Bam Bam by Camila Cabello and Ed Sheeran at 36. Folks, let this become a hit and not Psycho Freak, that's just wrong. Cold Heart PNAU Remix by Elton John and Dua Lipa at 35, Woman by Doja Cat at 34, and Enemy by Imagine Dragons and JID at 30. And with all that, we only got a single credible gain this week. Sunroof by Nicky Yor and Daisy up again to 33. Because this is picking up traction steadily in all channels. It's gonna be a hit this year, just watch. But of course, the larger story is Drake's album bomb. And given that it's got more than 12 songs, I'm gonna be discussing the tracks in the top 20 or the best and worst of this week. So outside of that, Tie That Binds at 66, Liability at 47, Overdrive at 42, that one was close to the best, Flights Booked at 28, and A Keeper at 21. But that makes a slightly more reasonable matter at hand with our new arrivals, starting with number 89, Wild as Her by Corey Kent. So here's the thing, I was sure that Corey Kent was just another relative no-name that Music Row was trying to shovel onto Nashville, but I'm not really sure that's entirely true here. Corey Kent's actually been releasing projects since the mid-2010s after getting his career jump-started by The Voice years earlier, where I actually think the bigger surprise is that he charted it all right now. Unfortunately, the song's not really interesting. I like the sentiment of some wild girl taking to the road and he's just hoping to be around to catch the ride, but between the dour acoustics, the limp groove, and the general feeling that we got a Jason Aldean instrumental from the early 2010s, Corey Kent's vocals are just not potent enough in order to sell this. Just kind of forgettable at the end of the day. It happens. Number 62, Downhill by Drake.
We're done overnight. Overnight, we're done overnight.
You know, I think this might be my favorite song from the album. The spare Afrobeat texture behind the spare snap, the inclusion of Bo Knox in the post-chorus to support the ethereal melody, and the fact for as much as Drake has dropped so much concern trolling all over this goddamn project, this is the first moment where even if he might want things to continue, he's got to accept that it's over. It almost feels a bit like a Torch song where you might have found with a melody that doesn't feel that far removed from the late 80s or early 90s, and on the surface, probably the brightest or goofiest song on the entire project, especially with how the vocals are layered on the final hook. But I don't know, there's a bit of an earnest charm that kind of worked, at least for me, so yeah, you know what, it's a good song. I'll take it. Number 52, U-Digg by Lil Baby, 42 Dugg, and Veeze.
You dig? It's my business, can't nobody know. You dig? Nigga shake my hand, but he really wanna cut my throat. You dig?
Looks like Lil Baby's gonna keep on drip feeding us singles from that upcoming album that's apparently coming out in July. And man, I'm still not impressed. Even if there are some ideas that might work here, the slightly symphonic keys behind the sharper trap whir, it's not bad in ramping up the bombast. And I'd argue it's actually pretty decently mastered, leaning pretty hard on that old Jeezy sample and interpolation. And you know, while Lil Baby sounds mostly on point with the stock flexing, and 42 Dugg's actually a bit sharper than I expected, Veeze just sounds muted, sloppy, and is a total non-presence here. It kills any momentum within the song for his second verse. Granted, the very staccato U-Digg tacked on to the end of lines and the run-on sentence rapping isn't helping this feel as well constructed as it could be. I blame Lil Baby for that. But for another single that's just not be all that interesting, it's a problem. I'll say it again. Number 23, Currents by Drake.
Think we're moving too fast, I'm intoxicated. We can move in slow motion if that's what you want, babe.
This song's already gotten ripped apart thanks to social media and the squeaking beds, which, as some might not remember, is actually a sample from Some Cut by Trillville, an absolutely awful song that's had entirely too much staying power. But what I think might annoy me more, beyond the terrible vocal mixing and the cheaply blended percussion, or how a melody just can't materialize from the faded burble, is how a song just fails in its central premise. For as much as Drake tries to emphasize that he's struggling to communicate with this person, when you include that sample as the most obvious part of your mix, you've conveyed exactly what you're trying to do. Not sure how you could misinterpret that. You're not bouncing on the bed. But yeah, it feels more unfinished than anything, put on the project likely because it's gonna be a meme. Oh, and it's terrible. Next, number 20, Calling My Name by Drake.
Why is it so hard giving you up? I'm counting the days till you come. I'm counting the ways to make you.
Well, okay, yeah, this sounds like a mess. Another burbling fragmented melody without actual percussion or anything for Drake's sloppy vocals to ride effectively that gets chopped into a low-key beat switch, and then somehow Drake's vocals get buried even further for him to badly croon that your pussy is calling my name. If you're gonna take songs like this and deliberately underplay them, try to be kind of subtle, why go for the most blunt lyrics possible that sound like you're a drunk frat boy calling out to mildly embarrassed sorority girls 50 yards away? Oh wait, this was also very clearly done just for the meme. And it sucks just about as much. Next, number 18, The Kind of Love We Make by Luke Combs.
Turning all the lights down low, taking nights and slow.
Not gonna lie, off the first couple of songs Luke Combs has been rolling out for this new project, I've been kind of intrigued. Might even review it at some point, who knows. And even if this was playing for a neo-traditional but minor key bedroom hookup jam, Luke Combs was at least gonna keep the textures warm, pulling on more pedal steel to flesh out that sound. It's gonna work for the target audience, especially for women. And while I think that's pretty good, that nifty guitar flourish that he slips in near the end of the hook, that's kinda cool. I don't think Luke Combs exactly delivers much in the way of subtlety or ambiance here. Some of it is his brasher delivery, some of it is how the track just feels a little bit more upbeat than really fitting in with the vibe, or how it just feels more broadly sketched than it needs to be in the lyrics. It's not quite as potent as it could be. I mean, it's not bad, honestly it's pretty good. I'm not gonna call this great though, just saying. Number 15, Break My Soul by Beyonce.
You won't break my soul. You won't break my soul. I'm telling everybody, everybody.
I'm on the fence about this song. As a lead-off single, certainly a choice, likely not indicative of the sound of the entire album, but one where Beyonce's team is certain that it's gonna do big enough numbers that Drake probably thought he had to get ahead of it with the house project that he released. Probably a mistake given what we had to get through to get here, and there's still more coming. And yet, for as much praise as Beyonce is getting for a better brand of house, I think when it comes down to the song itself, I'm just kind of lukewarm, at best. Maybe it's just being kind of tired of the same Robin S sample that's just been overexposed the past couple of years. Maybe it's how Beyonce doesn't really deliver the song with a lot of flair, seeming a little bit tuned out on the hook that does not pay off the crescendo. Maybe it's how between the bringing in the big Frida chops and the reference to being overworked and quitting jobs, it's trying to place itself closer to House's queer street-level origins, and that doesn't really align with Beyonce's style of glamour or modern reality. It feels a little off to me. The aspirational ideas of the song feel kind of appropriated, where Beyonce's actually gotten some criticism before. The framing of revolution, and it's kind of toothless. Yeah, it's better mixed and better mastered than the majority of Drake's album, and of course she sounds better, but without that contrast, or the fact that it's been a couple years since we've gotten a proper Beyonce project, or hell, give this to any other modern R&B star, I don't think this would be getting the same praise. I mean, it's fine for what it is. I'm not putting it on a pedestal. Number 14, Massive by Drake.
Behind us, maybe we can find us again. I know, put this behind us, we can find us again.
Okay, some credit here. I actually don't mind this. The piano's built to a bit of a vintage house vibe off the crisper drums and the vocal samples. There's a little bit more pattern groove. The production's actually a little bit better overall for a pretty good beat. And then you drop Drake on top of it, where he croons about being so into this girl, wanting to make some sort of connection and reconcile because he doesn't want to have to go on without having done so, even if his funeral is going to be totally lit given how he's treated people, likely leaving the implication for better or worse. And he's so obviously the worst part of his own goddamn music, it's not even funny anymore. I'm willing to forgive a lot, but give this to anyone else, just leave it as an instrumental even, this could have been so much better. Number 13, Texts Go Green by Drake.
No, you missed the days when I was gripping on it. No, you're in the house tonight just thinking on it. I moved on so long ago.
My god, this track's obnoxious. The sloppy, demo-esque vocal mixing, the concern trolling where he's trying to play the bitter, no, I'm totally over you, you're not over me card, and it's not remotely believable, even as there's more give and take that's just tired at this point. The fact that we have to sit through 4 verses of this track for over 5 minutes, where so much of it is obviously offbeat, borderline freestyled, or how the whole Text Go Green sentiment was already used by Drake on Chicago Freestyle, so he's not even hiding that he's recycling anymore. Yeah, it actually has a bit more of a tune, but given what Drake's doing with it, I'm not enjoying any of it. Number 7, Falling Back by Drake.
Finding a way to stay out of the way, holding me back, you're supposed to come right back, guarding myself while I'm all on display.
Someone needs to explain to me why Drake thought this should be the single with the big opulent music video. The fizzy tapping beat, his faded vocals where he's openly struggling to hit the higher notes even as they drizzle on the pitch correction, the lack of a stronger hook as he half-heartedly croons that this girl is treating him like a fallback option after their experiences. Can't imagine why, where he clearly takes offense given that without him she'd be nothing. Yeah, he's going there, just charming. You can't imagine why she thinks this way. But it's just this underwhelming wisp of a song where it's hard to ignore how his melody lines feel pulled from a lot of old Weekend demos from Kissland. Just kind of forgettable. Let's move on. Number 6, Sticky by Drake.
You know how sticky it get, ayy. You know how sticky it get, ayy. You know how sticky it get, ayy. She want me to play with that cat, ayy. She love how I make it all wet, ayy. You know how sticky it get, ayy.
And here's where we get the telling side of the story of this album. The 2 highest charting songs are the ones with the most actual rapping on them, where even if the pulsating bass is mixed really clumsily over Drake's vocals with the spare hi-hat, hey, Drake's rapping about how he doesn't come to the Met Gala because they don't let him bring more people, how they should free Young Thug despite everything he's done, and a bunch of vaguely frustrated flexes because when you're this successful, this is how complicated it all gets. All to support the underlying sentiment that he's bringing back the late Virgil Abloh in this vibe, because he didn't change. He millioned. The song ends with a sample that they weren't supposed to come up with this, something like this. It's sampled from Virgil himself. I kind of feel like the feeling's mutual here. And finally, number 1, Jimmy Cooks by Drake featuring 21 Savage.
Rest in peace to Drama King. We was straight stunned. You don't like the way I talk. Niggas say something.
And isn't this ironic? Drake makes such a big deal about venturing into house music, making an attempt for a lot of nebulous reasons where I'm not even sure he would admit it was an artistic success all the way through. And the song that charted the highest was the tacked on Certified Lover Boy Extra that might as well be the weaker B-side of Knife Talk. A sign that for as much as Drake's audience has complained about him making the same music over and over again, they wind up coming back to the same stock sound. The same clicking trap percussion against the Memphis samples that are not quite as well blended as they should be, where Drake lifelessly rambles over half-formed basketball references on the paranoia before the beat switches up and 21 Savage runs away with the whole goddamn song. But even then, I'm not really wowed by his verse. The gunplay and references are a little more clever and shouting out Nadeska, Rick Ross, the Will Smith slap, and a lot more. But again, he did more with Knife Talk, which is a song that can better manage 21 Savage's ominous presence. It's obvious this was just tacked on to the end of the project. My guess because Drake didn't quite have enough faith that the House Fives would actually land the same level of chart success on their own, and turns out he was mostly proven right. And we might all be worse off, because this is just kind of forgettable. It's not special. And anyway, Drake's getting both the worst of the week anyway, with Currents and then Calling My Name as the dishonorable mention. Best of the week, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't give it to Beyonce. The song just isn't doing much for me. So honorable mention's going to Luke Combs for The Kind of Love We Make, and the best of the week's actually going to Drake for Downhill. Hey, he caught a deep cut that works for me. I like the song. It happens. Next week, though, the fallout from all this mess. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. I'll see you next time.